On Cedric Beaufort's engagement day, I found myself 5 years in the future. The moment I saw my boyfriend, tears filled my eyes. Husband, I'm so scared. To my surprise, my boyfriend ran away 2 miles in fear. Sister-in-law, don't mess with me. I was dumbfounded. Are you saying my husband is your brother? Cedric Beaufort. When I first met the parents, Cedric Beaufort had been the most opposed to me. Didn't he hate me the most back then? That evening, Cedric Beaufort pinned me down on the bed and coldly said, "Why call me husband instead of brother? You like role-playing so much. I'll play along with you." Looking at the time displayed on my phone's lock screen, I realized I had traveled through time. 1 second I was at the engagement party, and the next I woke up 5 years later. I was drenched in cold sweat, my brain in disarray, so much so that when I saw my boyfriend Marcus Beaufort, I burst into tears from excitement. I scrambled out of the hospital bed and opened my arms to Marcus Beaufort. Husband, I somehow traveled through time. When I woke up, I was all alone in the hospital, and I didn't know anyone. I'm so scared. To my surprise, Marcus Beaufort looked terrified and ran away 2 miles. He curled up in a corner of the hospital room, breaking down. Sister-in-law, don't mess with me. If my brother finds out, he'll kill me. Now it was my turn to be dumbfounded. I swallowed hard, my voice trembling. You mean, my husband is your brother? Marcus Beaufort looked at me with suspicion, grabbing his hair. Did you hit your head? Your memory is still stuck 5 years ago. Don't panic, I'll take you for a checkup. My husband is really Cedric Beaufort. Oh my God, how lucky can I get? The shock was secondary. I was mainly excited. I didn't even hear Marcus Beaufort's reassurances as I accidentally blurted out my true feelings. What? Who can understand the feelings of someone who has a crush right now? Although Marcus Beaufort is handsome, Cedric Beaufort is 100 times better looking. When I was choosing a marriage partner back then, my goal was to marry Cedric Beaufort, not for anything else, but for that face. Marcus Beaufort. He stared at me, slowly frowning. True to Maud, what do you mean? You wanted to marry my brother from the start. You used to call him husband so sweetly, and now you're messing with me. I bit my lip, smiling awkwardly. It was just a little strategy to avoid marrying an ugly man. How could it be considered messing with him? In an arranged marriage, benefits come first. Without any emotional foundation, I definitely picked based on looks. Among the eligible men in the circle, the Beaufort brothers were the best looking, but my dad said that Cedric Beaufort, as the head of the Beaufort family, was too high profile for me to aspire to. Moreover, he had always been indifferent to women, known for his cold-blooded ruthlessness in business, showing that he was exceptionally calculating. As a girl with nothing but superficial thoughts, I would definitely suffer if I married into that family. I usually listened to advice, so I turned my attention to Marcus Beaufort, but deep down, I still felt a little disappointed. Until the day our families met, I completely dismissed my thoughts about Cedric Beaufort and was grateful for my choice. That day, Cedric Beaufort sat in the main seat with a cold expression the entire time. Every word he spoke hinted at a breakup. He looked like he wanted to kick me out immediately. Thinking about this, my rationality finally returned. If he hated me so much, why would he marry me? True to Maud, come here. I didn't notice when Cedric Beaufort appeared at the door. His shirt was impeccably buttoned to the top, and he wore a long camel-colored coat over his arm. Under the wall lamp, his half-framed glasses glinted coldly. His gaze was deep, and he spoke slowly. Just 4 simple words, but I felt an infinite pressure. It instantly evoked my fear of Cedric Beaufort. My heart raced, my nerves were tense. I instinctively bowed and blurted out, "Brother." The air instantly froze. I realized I had said the wrong thing and stammered an explanation. If I said I traveled through time and I'm not used to calling you husband yet, would you believe me? Marcus Beaufort widened his eyes, looking like he was about to cry. Brother, I'm innocent. This isn't my idea. Please see for yourself. I've been separated from her for 5 years. There's really no connection. Cedric Beaufort ignored him, focusing his gaze on me and calmly saying, "Let's go home." Cedric Beaufort's aura was too strong. I followed him closely, feeling timid. Cedric Beaufort didn't speak a word. I was afraid that if I said too much, I would say something wrong, so I kept silent. The silence heightened my anxiety. Images of news about Cedric Beaufort's cold-bloodedness flashed through my mind. I even thought about how I would die. But as soon as we entered the house, Cedric Beaufort pushed me down onto the sofa. His long, pale fingers skillfully glided down my back, and he unhooked my bra with one hand. As the fabric fell to the floor, Cedric Beaufort's gaze darkened as he coldly said, "Why call me husband instead of brother? Since you enjoy role-playing so much, I'll play along with you." I looked at Cedric Beaufort's well-defined, 8-pack abs and blushed uncontrollably. "Let go of me, let go." "No, wait, let me explain." Cedric Beaufort chuckled softly. "He won't find out. Isn't it exciting?" My pupils shook in disbelief, rendering me speechless. Wait, is this still the reserved and stern CEO I know? He got into character way too fast. In my days, Cedric Beaufort bit my earlobe, deliberately breathing softly near my ear. His low voice was so seductive it felt like a violation. "Be good, baby. You're so beautiful. Tell me, has he been here?" My skin tingled with electric-like chills. I was so entranced that I forgot everything. Cedric Beaufort. Wah, I can't take it anymore. The result of being infatuated with beauty was that I was exhausted and fainted. In my haze, someone was calling me. Instinctively, I turned over and quietly pleaded, "Cedric Beaufort, my good husband, stop. I really can't anymore. I really only love you. Husband, true to Maud." Cedric Beaufort's cold voice came, laced with chill. I jolted awake, opening my eyes, dressed in a gown, with a wedding ring, and in the lounge. I traveled back again. Before I could sort out my thoughts, Cedric Beaufort lifted his eyelids to look at me, speaking lightly. "If I didn't hear wrong just now, you're fantasizing about me." I felt like a computer overloaded, completely frozen from trying to process everything. "Yes, I'm sorry." The sultry images from last night overlapped with Cedric Beaufort's cool and noble figure in front of me. I felt my face turn crimson. Cedric Beaufort maintained a calm expression as he sat down on the sofa directly across from me. He crossed his long legs and looked at me. "Do you think this matter can be resolved with just an apology?" I stared blankly, feeling guilty as I said, "What should we do?" After all, from the current perspective, I was just a weirdo who was mentally cheating on my boyfriend with his brother. Cedric Beaufort leaned back on the sofa, his expression turning cold. "I won't allow my brother to marry a woman who is unfaithful to him." The aura unique to someone in power was suffocating. "No." I unconsciously clutched the layer of white tulle on my skirt. I wanted to argue but couldn't find the words. If I told Cedric Beaufort now that I traveled 5 years into the future and married him, I would probably be sent to a mental hospital the next second. Who would believe such an absurd thing? After all, everyone knows that Cedric Beaufort doesn't like me. The eldest son of the Beaufort family is usually very composed, and the only time he lost his temper was when I and Marcus Beaufort announced our engagement. At the press conference, he stood up and left mid-event, disregarding the media. Now he was pressuring me, clearly trying to take the opportunity to break off the engagement. But I don't want to break the engagement. I really don't want to marry those ugly men. If we cancel the engagement now, both families will be in an awkward position. Cedric Beaufort, consider the cooperation project. The more I thought about it, the more anxious I became, and tears filled my eyes, spilling down my cheeks. Cedric Beaufort seemed to see through my thoughts, and interrupted me mercilessly. "You and Marcus Beaufort must break the engagement." At this point, there was only one way left to go, throwing a tantrum. I froze for 2 seconds, then lifted my skirt and sat down on the ground. "What? I don't care. I'll die in the Beaufort family if I have to. I will never break the engagement." I cried out loudly, wiping my tears while secretly shifting my position. I had just sat awkwardly, and hadn't settled on my skirt. The floor was quite cold. Cedric Beaufort raised an eyebrow and said coolly, "If you really don't want to break the engagement, it's not without solutions." I stopped crying immediately, sniffling as I asked, "What is the solution?" "We've only publicly announced the news of the marriage. We haven't specified which eligible Beaufort man you're marrying." Indeed, all matters regarding the marriage had been handled by the Beaufort family. All news referred only to Trude Maud and Cedric Beaufort. Even at this engagement party, the welcoming sign didn't include both our full names. I had complained to my dad more than once that the Beaufort family didn't value me, but he advised me to bear with it, and not let small matters ruin the relationship. So doesn't this just show that the Beaufort family is taking advantage of their status? What does reconciliation without breaking the engagement matter? In my bewildered gaze, Cedric Beaufort slowly said, "So, you can choose to marry me." My brain completely malfunctioned, to the point of smoking. I mean, how can one person be so lucky? In one day, hitting the jackpot twice. I could hardly contain my excitement. Sure, but at Cedric Beaufort's probing gaze, I suddenly hit the brakes on my enthusiasm. What I mean is, wouldn't that be inappropriate? After all, you just said I'm an unfaithful woman. I nervously pressed my lips together, pretending to be reserved. I had just been too excited, and almost forgot to maintain my image, so I quickly tried to salvage the situation. Cedric Beaufort was serious, his expression unchanged. True to Maud, you called my name in your dream. So, you're just not faithful to him, not to me. I blinked in confusion. Is that logic correct? I felt something was off. Cedric Beaufort frowned slightly, seemingly indifferent. Are you implying that you are indeed unfaithful? Of course not. I instinctively retorted. I was just a little girl, who loved looking at handsome men. After marriage, will you still call other men's names? How could I? Then what's wrong with my logic? It seems there's nothing wrong with it. Of course, you can choose to reject my proposal, but as the party at fault, the Maud family has to pay all the breach of contract compensation. I agree. I completely agree. I recalled the long string of zeros on the contract and nodded vigorously. Cedric Beaufort glanced at his watch, stood up. The ceremony is about to start. We should go on stage. My thoughts were once again pulled by him. But what about your clothes? You don't have a suit. Before I could finish, Cedric Beaufort's secretary knocked on the door. Cedric Beaufort, here's the outfit you requested. I was momentarily stunned. How did you know in advance? Cedric Beaufort changed into the jacket, naturally taking my hand. Which side do you want to stand on? On the left. My left side looks better. Okay, I was just about to ask you something, but suddenly forgot. You asked me, which side of my face looks better. Did I? I think both sides look good. Is he complimenting me? It's well known that when a handsome guy praises you, it's different from a stranger doing it. I couldn't help but smile, forgetting everything else. Late at night, after the tedious ceremony, I slowly made my way to the underground garage. Cedric Beaufort had been called away by his secretary, and left in a hurry. Although it wasn't explicitly stated, the public had always assumed I was engaged to Marcus Beaufort. Today, everyone saw me holding Cedric Beaufort's hand, and their expressions were completely unrestrained. My father was so shocked he couldn't speak. The media was buzzing, and the board was accusing Cedric Beaufort of being reckless. There was a pile of things he needed to handle. The elevator arrived at the second basement floor. I ran into Marcus Beaufort, who was smoking at the elevator entrance. He stared at me silently and extinguished his cigarette. I jumped in surprise. What are you doing standing here, all quiet? Marcus Beaufort took a deep breath. Are you really okay with being engaged to my brother? Yes. I felt a bit confused. Marcus Beaufort's brows furrowed even deeper. You can't be really falling for me, right? I tidied my hair, weighing my words. Oh, it's just that I'm too charming. Initially, we agreed to marry first and love later. Who knew you'd fall for me in just a few days? Marcus Beaufort's lips twitched in disbelief. What are you thinking? Since we've known each other for a while, I couldn't bear to let you remain in the dark. Do you know that my brother has a... Before Marcus Beaufort could finish, a sharp honk interrupted him. The car window rolled down, and Cedric Beaufort leaned back in the back seat, looking indifferent in his suit. I turned towards the sound and met his gaze. Brother. Marcus Beaufort instantly straightened up, greeting him. Cedric Beaufort's fair, slender fingers casually tapped the console in the middle, his gaze lingering on me. Are you going home? His tone was a bit cold. I shivered, recalling the scene from the day I crossed over. Why yes, moving into the marital home after the engagement was also part of the agreement. Get in the car. Sure. That pressure returned. I quickly opened the car door. As if there were a ghost behind me urging me on, the driver stepped on the gas, and the car smoothly started. What were you talking about just now? Cedric Beaufort suddenly spoke, his tone emotionless. As the light outside flickered, his sharply defined features were obscured by shadows. Nothing, I replied in a whisper. Indeed, I hadn't even had a chance to get to the point when he interrupted. Cedric Beaufort didn't respond, but I could clearly feel the pressure inside the car drop. I forced myself to lighten the mood, making small talk. Didn't Secretary Wang say you had to deal with several interviews tonight? Why are you back so soon? Cedric Beaufort lifted his eyelids to look at me, his tone neutral. Yeah, I arrived at the wrong time. No, I just wanted to say that I'm really glad you came to pick me up. Otherwise, I wouldn't have the strength to drive after wearing high heels all night. I hurried to explain. Cedric Beaufort closed his eyes, his sharp brows still shrouded in a layer of gloom. After a while, he replied, "Got it." I noticed that Cedric Beaufort seemed to be in a bad mood, so I wisely kept quiet. In the silence, Cedric Beaufort patted his thigh. "Put your feet up." Hey. I looked at him in surprise. "Aren't your feet uncomfortable?" "Oh, okay." I obediently complied. Cedric Beaufort took off my high heels, one hand supporting my calf while the other gently massaged my ankle. A warm sensation spread through me. I awkwardly looked away, tentatively trying to pull my leg back. "Really, it's okay. A good sleep will do the trick." Cedric Beaufort held my ankle tightly, his fingers tightening with some force. "I feel it matters." For the rest of the ride, we didn't exchange another word. The atmosphere became inexplicably subtle. When we got out of the car, I was about to bend down to put on my shoes, but Cedric Beaufort wrapped his arms around me and effortlessly lifted me up. With my body suspended in the air, I wrapped my arms around his neck, my head pressed tightly against his solid chest. I could clearly feel the heat of his body and the steady rhythm of his heartbeat through the fabric, including the slight rise and fall of his chest muscles as we went up the stairs. My face unknowingly turned beet red. In the master bedroom, I lay on the bed, video chatting with my best friend, true to Maud. "When did you manage to snag Cedric Beaufort without telling us?" The excitement of gossip couldn't be contained on the phone screen. Her high-pitched voice echoed in the room. I recalled the awkward scene from the afternoon and spoke vaguely. "Well, he found out about my boldness. Oh. And then he said he wouldn't allow a woman like me to marry his brother." "That makes sense. But he said I could marry him instead." "Wait a second. What does this even mean?" I fell silent, partly because I realized my best friend sounded like she was telling a joke, and partly because, upon reviewing it, I also felt the situation was absurd. But the most absurd thing was that, when Cedric Beaufort spoke to me, I didn't feel anything was wrong. After thinking for a while, I slowly smiled. "Do you think he might actually like me? Do you think he's afraid of losing the company if he suddenly breaks the engagement and then ended up liking you?" We said in unison. "Ahem, regardless of the reason. The urgent matter is that you must seize the opportunity. A guy like Cedric Beaufort must be captured." "Absolutely." I sprang up from the bed like a fish leaping from water. After all, I was only engaged now. What if Cedric Beaufort changed his mind before we got the marriage certificate? "Wait, tonight my sister must help you." Half an hour later, I received a local delivery from my best friend. I looked at the fabric in the box that barely covered the key areas and blushed furiously. "Isn't this a bit too much?" I hesitated as I held it up in front of the mirror, second-guessing myself. My best friend on the screen covered her mouth, letting out sharp bursts of laughter. "Whoa, I knew black would suit you. Hurry and change so I can see." "Oh, you must look stunning in it." All right, I'll give it a try." Just as I stepped out of the bathroom, I bumped into Cedric Beaufort, who was about to push the door open. He quickly steadied me by holding my waist and pulled me into his embrace. My phone fell to the ground, and my friend's voice rang out loudly. "True to Maud, are you ready?" "Whoa, with your figure, just thinking about it makes it hard to hold back." I stood frozen, my cheeks burning with embarrassment. Cedric Beaufort released his grip once he confirmed I was steady, but his deep gaze darkened. I covered my chest, fumbling to pick up my phone, only to find that, when I crouched down, my dress barely covered my thighs. Caught in a dilemma, I squatted in front of Cedric Beaufort, unable to figure out how to proceed. I felt utterly humiliated and couldn't bring myself to look at him. I'll sleep in the guest room tonight. You should go to bed early. Cedric Beaufort calmly picked up my phone and handed it to me, his tone steady. It felt like a bucket of cold water had been poured over me. I stared at the door that closed steadily, then dashed into the cloakroom. Looking into the full-length mirror, I couldn't believe my eyes as I muttered to myself, what the hell? I looked this good. How could he not react at all? I felt indignant. This wasn't just about getting married anymore. It had escalated to the level of whether we would end up together. An hour later, after finishing my bath and applying fragrant body lotion, I confidently pushed open the guest room door. He must have been pretending. How could anyone not be moved by me? Cedric Beaufort was in a bathrobe, loosely tied, with his collar hanging open, revealing his abs. He was drying his hair with a towel when he paused upon hearing me. His arm muscles were smoothly defined, with faint blue veins visible. I swallowed hard, my heart racing uncontrollably. Honey, want to sleep together? Before he could respond, I jumped into bed. I knew it, my honey wouldn't want to leave me alone. After a moment, the mattress beside me sank. Cedric Beaufort's unique fresh scent spread around. He turned off the lights. In the darkness, the sound of my heart pounding seemed amplified. I gathered my courage and moved closer, my fingers tentatively climbing onto his abdomen. Cedric Beaufort's breath deepened, his voice laced with warning. True to Maud, I stayed silent, stubbornly burrowing into his embrace. In the next moment, the world spun. Cedric Beaufort held my waist, pinning me beneath him. Our noses touched, and I could feel his restrained breaths. I felt my entire body heating up, instinctively closing my eyes. Things I could have anticipated just didn't happen for a long time. I don't know how much time passed, but suddenly I felt the pressure at my waist ease. Cedric Beaufort, with a dark expression, wrapped me in a blanket like a cocoon and held me close. If you keep acting up, you'll just have to go back to sleep by yourself. I was trapped in his embrace, unable to move. I wanted to protest, but I didn't dare. All I could do was squirm slightly, trying to escape. But as soon as I shifted a few centimeters, Cedric Beaufort pulled me back in. He whispered in my ear, his voice deep, not going to sleep. Heh. Sleep. I pouted, wanting to cry. I didn't know if he was pretending or not, but I was genuinely feeling miserable. Being held like this was really uncomfortable. I'd been persistently teasing Cedric Beaufort for a month, yet he remained unmoved. There were several times I even felt he was aroused, but in the end, he always pulled away coldly. I was starting to doubt my life choices. At the bar, I drank heavily, feeling down. My best friend came down from the dance floor, surprised to see me. You actually have time to come out and play today. I slammed my drink down and waved my hand dramatically. Cedric Beaufort is nothing. I can find someone better looking in no time. My friend nodded in agreement. I told you, it must be him who can't keep up. All show and no substance. Better switch before you get a marriage license. I tossed my long hair and squinted my eyes. Right, I'll find someone right now. Through the haze, I spotted a tall figure in the crowd. That body proportion, that aura, it was definitely my type. Feeling bold from the drinks, I swayed my hips and directly approached him. Navigating through the crowded booths, I accurately stumbled right onto the man, smoothly starting a conversation. Hey there, want to grab a drink? He caught my waist and replied indifferently, I'm married. What a coincidence. I have a husband too, but that won't matter for long. I staggered into his embrace, waving my hand dismissively. I had truly drunk too much, and was a bit unsteady on my feet. The man chuckled coldly, his rough fingers brushing against my lips. Well, that is indeed a coincidence, because it seems like I might soon be without a wife too. My alcohol-soaked brain worked slowly. If he was getting divorced, that made things easier. I smirked and leaned in closer. You must have a lot of people chasing you with looks like that. The man regarded me coolly, his expression still stern. Why? Do you want to cut in line? Can I? I genuinely like you. But if there are too many people, then never mind. His eyes showed no sign of change as he replied slowly. You pursue who you want. Don't worry about them. That makes sense. After a moment's thought, I boldly pushed him back onto the sofa. His gaze darkened further. He gripped my chin, forcing some distance between us. Didn't you say you had a husband? Of course. I knew. But what did it matter? I laid my head on his shoulder and replied seriously, "You can kiss me, and I'll break up with him when I get back. Is that so? Then no need to wait to get back. We can do it now." His icy voice sent a shiver down my spine, bringing me back to my senses. I rubbed my eyes in shock. Cedric Beaufort. I quickly shut my eyes, muttering to myself, "It must be a dream. It has to be a dream." After mentally preparing myself, I bravely opened my eyes. To my surprise, it was still him. Cedric Beaufort chuckled, flipping me over onto the cushions. His warm breath brushed against my neck, sending tingles down my spine. "Now tell me your reason for cheating while married, Cedric Beaufort." "Let me explain." Before I could finish, Cedric Beaufort seized my waist, and his fierce kiss overwhelmed me, taking away all my breath. Kissed into a daze, I felt lightheaded again. In a blur, I was lifted into a car by him. In the cramped backseat, Cedric Beaufort pinned me against his thigh, punishing me again and again. The car windows fogged up, my palm prints etched on the glass. I kept repeating Cedric Beaufort's name until he finally had mercy and released my swollen lips. In the rearview mirror, I noticed my clothes in disarray and my neck covered in hickeys. The temperature inside the car kept rising, the alcohol adding to the heat. Our skin pressed tightly together, and I couldn't help but whine, "Hubby, hubby, it's so hot." Cedric Beaufort swallowed hard, his voice husky. "Behave, don't move around, it's so hot." I boldly unbuttoned my collar. In the expectation of my gaze, Cedric Beaufort smoothed my skirt that had rolled up to my waist, forcefully buttoning my top back up. One by one, I stared at him, my thoughts gradually clearing. "Stay in the car. I'll go get you some hangover medicine." As the car door opened, a rush of cold air swept in. I shivered, and tears fell involuntarily. To be rejected after all this, how humiliating. "Hey, Marcus Beaufort, why are you calling me so late? Wait, why are you crying? Where are you now? I'll come pick you up." "No need. Just tell me what you didn't finish saying that day." "Is there something your brother is hiding from me?" There was a moment of silence on the other end. "My brother has always had an unforgettable crush." "An unforgettable crush? Hey, why are you crying? I'll just marry you instead." "Shut up." I hung up, sobbing uncontrollably. How could Cedric Beaufort treat me this way? If only he had been clear with me from the start, I wouldn't have continued to entangle myself deeper. But now, how could he accept my closeness while still thinking of someone else? No wonder he would never take that final step. Turns out, he was guarding himself for love. What a scumbag. Perhaps it was the stuffy air in the car and my heightened emotions. As I cried, I suddenly slumped onto the leather seat and lost consciousness. When I opened my eyes again, I found myself in the main bedroom of our marital home, staring at the prominent wedding photo on the wall. I froze for a couple of seconds. When did Cedric Beaufort and I take wedding photos? A terrifying thought crossed my mind. I hurriedly jumped to the bedside and grabbed my phone, opening the calendar. Oh my God, I've somehow jumped back 5 years. I shook my head and let out a deep breath. No matter what year it was now, I was definitely getting a divorce. I threw back the covers and stormed out of bed. But as soon as my feet touched the ground, my legs buckled, and I unexpectedly fell onto the carpet. The maid rushed in, her worried inquiries turning into awkward coughs, when her gaze landed on me. Mom, I'll go make you some soup to help you recover." "Mom, should I replace your outfit with a turtleneck today?" I steadied myself against the bed and looked down. My loose silk nightgown had a low neckline. Crimson marks spread from my collarbone down to my chest. I rubbed my sore back, gritting my teeth in anger. Cedric Beaufort was such a scoundrel. Wasn't he still pining for his crush? Then what did that make what he did to me? I put on a pair of towering heels that gave me a fierce look, and dressed myself before heading downstairs. "Where's Cedric Beaufort?" "Mom, he left for the company early this morning. Prepare the car. I need to find him." Without waiting for the secretary to announce me, I pushed open the door to the CEO's office. "Wait, you can't go in right now." Cedric Beaufort nodded slightly, unflustered, signaling for the secretary to leave. Seeing him in that pristine facade just fueled my anger. Not giving him a chance to speak, I slammed the printed divorce agreement down in front of him. "I want a divorce. I put my hands on my hips, glaring down at him. Cedric Beaufort leaned back in his chair, raising an eyebrow slightly. His expression remained indifferent. The computer chimed in with an anxious voice. Cedric Beaufort, our meeting today. Meeting adjourned. Cedric Beaufort looked at me calmly, his voice steady. I felt a little nervous, but then I thought, I was just interrupting his work. Work was nowhere near as important as my feelings, so I straightened up and repeated loudly, I said I want a divorce. Didn't you hear me? He rolled up his shirt cuffs, the veins on the back of his hands bulging with emotion. Is it just because I didn't agree to you being on top last night? Huh. I was taken aback. Is this what I think it means? Cedric Beaufort stood up and removed his watch. I was forced to look up at him, and stepped back a bit. What are you doing? Cedric Beaufort lifted me onto the table, placing his hands on either side of my body as he leaned in to look at me. He was tall, and in that position, I felt completely enveloped by him. The size difference made my confidence evaporate in an instant. Wife, feel it for yourself. I wanted to pull away, but he held my lower back down. Feel what? As he drew closer, his deep-set eyes locked onto mine, captivating me completely. He chuckled softly and took my hand, guiding it downwards. The hard outline of the leather ring around his thigh became apparent under my palm. My pupils trembled, my ears flushed with heat. Why are you wearing this under your slacks? What if someone sees? His lips grazed my neck, planting light kisses, his voice low. Does my wife not like it? My heart raced, threatening to leap from my chest, and I stuttered, unable to find the words. Beauty can lead one astray. My denials turned over and over in my mouth, but ultimately went down the hatch. Documents scattered to the floor. Cedric Beaufort leaned over, almost seductively, and asked again, can my wife help me take it off? I internally scorned myself, but my hand moved honestly. The firm muscle of Cedric Beaufort's thigh left clear red marks, making it hard for me to breathe. I buried my face in his embrace, murmuring, all right, I took it off. Cedric Beaufort's long fingers pressed down on the silver lock, adjusting the collar's size. I widened my eyes in shock. How did you get it around your neck? Cedric Beaufort grasped my wrist again, chuckling lowly. Convenient, hold on tight. An hour later, I clutched the collar around his neck tightly, my eyes unfocused. It's too heavy. I'm really going to fall off. Cedric Beaufort's cold and distant eyes were filled with desire as his hands tightened around my waist once again. Are we still getting a divorce? The muscles on Cedric Beaufort's neck bulged as I tugged at him, the corners of his eyes reddening. I gritted my teeth. Yes, if I'm going to sleep with him enough, then I'll also get this divorce. You ungrateful little thing. Cedric Beaufort stopped indulging me, exerting his strength with increasing intensity. Tears brimmed in the corners of my eyes as I felt wronged, and punched him with my fist. You're the ungrateful one. Keeping a white moonlight in your heart, yet still trying to provoke me. Cedric Beaufort's aggressive advance suddenly halted. He rubbed his forehead, his voice tinged with resignation. You've jumped into this role playing too abruptly. I'm struggling to keep up with your performance. Cedric Beaufort chuckled, sitting up and pulling me close. Wife, can you assign me a better role next time? 2 weeks ago, you were the evil boss. Last week, the indecent doctor. This week, it's the cheater. Heavens, am I really this frivolous 5 years later? I slapped my burning cheeks, coming back to my senses. Stop changing the subject. You know very well who you were saving yourself for when we got engaged. Is it because someone didn't want you that you settled for me? Wife, didn't you just criticize me for this yesterday? Are you saying you've always liked me? It started from the engagement. Yes, marrying you has been my long-term plan. Now I was utterly dumbfounded. Then why didn't you touch me back then? I thought you had feelings for Marcus Beaufort, that you were just being nice to me for the sake of the company. So I restrained myself. I didn't want you to regret it later. Oh, is that so? Cedric Beaufort's expression grew darker by the moment. Did Marcus Beaufort say something behind my back that led to your misunderstanding? No, not at all. Now I was the one feeling anxious. Cedric Beaufort kissed me fiercely, his voice carrying a dangerous undertone. Don't rush to defend him, wife. Let's settle the score for the slander you've thrown at me. Be good, don't dodge. Cedric Beaufort, no, Really, you can't. Didn't you shout yesterday that you wanted to be ravaged 7 times in one night? As your husband, I naturally have to fulfill your wishes. I was wrong. I really was. I clasped my hands in a pleading manner and tried to retreat. Cedric Beaufort seized my ankle, forcefully dragging me back beneath him. Count carefully. If you get it wrong, we'll start over. When I woke up, I was back 5 years ago. Cedric Beaufort reached out to feel my forehead when he saw I was awake. The doctor said your cold isn't fully healed, and you went out drinking, which caused your fever. He pulled his hand back with restraint, not lingering too long. Take your medicine first. Before I returned to the past, I had probed 5 years ago Cedric Beaufort about his secret crush on me. Just thinking about how he had to keep a calm facade while feeling jealous back then made me secretly pleased. Now, I could directly manipulate him. I looked at the pill Cedric Beaufort held out, leaned down to take it, and inadvertently brushed my tongue against it. Cedric Beaufort's hand trembled in mid-air, his breath suddenly heavier. Thank you. I stifled a laugh and took a sip of warm water. The powerful Cedric Beaufort could also hesitate out of fear of rejection. For the next week, I stayed home to recuperate. Cedric Beaufort worked from home to take care of me. I enthusiastically ignited the flames between us and enjoyed myself immensely. Every time Cedric Beaufort asked me about plans for the marriage certificate, I deliberately changed the subject. Cedric Beaufort thought I hadn't made up my mind about marrying him, so he suppressed his desires each time. That night, I nestled into his arms as usual. Cedric Beaufort pressed his lips together, his voice slightly strained. You need to rest. I'm going back to the study to handle work. I immediately feigned weakness, collapsing into his arms to rub against his chest. Take me with you. I feel so uncomfortable. I don't want to be alone. Cedric Beaufort stiffened, speaking in a deep voice. I'll have the housekeeper come keep you company. I looked at him, my eyes turning red. Is it that hard for you to be with me? Cedric Beaufort sighed in resignation. The study doesn't have space for you to lie down. I'm worried you'll be uncomfortable. I lifted the corners of my mouth, clinging to him like a koala. You can just hold me. Are you sure? Don't you want to? I'm worried you'll regret it. What could I possibly regret? After successfully teasing him again, I proudly lifted my head. Cedric Beaufort smirked and effortlessly scooped me up, placing me on his lap in the study. I wrapped myself in a blanket and found a comfortable position in his embrace. All right, you can get back to work. Cedric Beaufort did not respond, opening his computer. In the next moment, excited voices erupted from the screen. Boss, who is this? Could it be our legendary sister-in-law? Help, someone is showing off their love. I realized Cedric Beaufort was in a video meeting, and I immediately felt embarrassed. Wanting to slide off him, Cedric Beaufort pulled me back, chuckling. Forgive me, my sister-in-law is quite clingy. I buried my face in his neck, whispering like a mosquito. Please, let me go. It's starting. I really can't face anyone right now. Call me husband so I can hear it. Husband, husband, husband. I looked at him eagerly. Can I leave now? No. Then can I just call you husband? Did I say calling me that would let you go? You're despicable. Wasn't it supposed to be me teasing him? Why was I being countered again? I felt frustrated and helpless, only able to vent my emotions by scribbling in a notebook. I was forced to participate in the entire meeting, with no academic skills. I felt drowsy listening. All right, we'll stop here for today. Boss, there are still a few issues with the finance section. Before the other party could finish, Cedric Beaufort shut the computer off. I belatedly spoke up. Why did you cut off the conversation halfway? Cedric Beaufort smiled faintly, his gaze landing on my chaotic scribbles. Preparing to try the 108 positions with Cedric Beaufort. Oh no, I had unintentionally written down my innermost thoughts while I was half asleep. My cheeks flushed, and I reached out to snatch the paper. You're not allowed to read what I scribbled. Cedric Beaufort trapped me in his arms, unhurriedly crossing out a line with a pen. I looked at him in confusion. What are you doing? Cedric Beaufort set down the pen and swept me up, carrying me toward the bedroom. Wife, there isn't much time left. We need to get started one by one. I froze for a moment, then screamed. Cedric Beaufort, you won't. Cedric Beaufort tossed me onto the bed, leisurely unbuttoning his shirt. Wife, did you enjoy these past few days? My vision blacked out, and my legs went weak. Husband, let me explain. Cedric Beaufort captured my lips, laughing softly. It's too late.